Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us on a Sunday morning. Greatly appreciated. If you want to be a part of the conversation, 402-464-5685, Starter Heyman text line, Honda Lincoln hotline. You can also track this on the Starter Heyman live video stream, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter live. You can see everything that's going on, and you can be a part of the conversation. Bigger than the score is what we're talking about. And in order to do that, we have to bring in the leader. We have to bring in the head honcho, the force. Let's bring in Peter Ferguson. How are you this morning, kind sir?
Hey, I'm doing all right, DP. Great. I appreciate that intro.
Oh, it's the least of what we can do, especially when we know why. Simplicity, taking care of the people who will take care of us.
Without question.
The young people that will make this community better as we go forward. And then knowing how and why we can contribute to this thing is important.
Well, and looking at the purpose and just like what, when you talk about bigger than the final score, just what is that purpose? And when you see that, score at the end of the day and on the scoreboard, there's other things that build into that. And so just definitely want to take that opportunity, and I appreciate you giving the platform for us to examine those things that are going on around the community.
Well, we talk about community in kind of a vague sense, and I'm real specific about community. Great communities come from great people. Great people come from great communities. They're necessary. They're tied together. So as we have these conversations, I want to carve out some time on this station so that we can talk about the good things in the community. We hear all the other stuff constantly, but we don't hear about the good people. We don't hear about the good families. We don't hear about the good teachers, the good educators, the good mentors. We don't hear about them enough. And so this hour will be on a constant basis about the good things that are happening in Lincoln and Lincoln Public Schools and the people who are involved. I have forgiven you publicly. I love you absolutely. But the fact that you're a Cowboys fan, listen, I'm from D.C. There are very few things genetically that I am predisposed to. But I think the first thing was air. Second thing was booing the Cowboys.
See, now I'm going to have to stop you right now. Now, my mom was born in California, okay, and my dad was from Texas, and not just Texas, Nacogdoches, Texas.
Gotcha.
Which, for people who don't know, it's right by Tyler, Texas, which is home of the Rose, Earl Campbell.
Which you should be an Oilers fan, not a Cowboys fan. That's how this should work.
See, now the situation is I did try to switch one year. Now, I think I was about 7 or 8. We lived in Washington State because my dad was in the military for 25 years. And for some reason, they were driving me to school, and I got left somewhere as I was wearing Seahawks gear. Now, I learned very early on that you abide by the home rules. And so every Sunday, I mean, now they were faith-going folks. But I will tell you that the Cowboys were on every Sunday. My dad would disappear.
Church, Cowboys, chicken. That's how the three said.
Those were the three pillars.
Right.
Now, what I would tell you is my dad got extremely restless. As you understand,
12:30.
People did not follow the 5 B's. Be brief, brother. Be brief.
Not in the message, no.
So he would leave us like a hot chicken wing to make sure that we were home on time to watch the Cowboys. And so that long-standing history is not going by the wayside. I think we have a lifetime subscription to the magazine, the Cowboys newsletter that we still get to this day. And so I'm going to wear something every Sunday.
You are so much better than that. You are so much better than that.
Hey, 1-1. That's all I'm going to say right now. Let's go, Cooper Rush. Let's go.
See, the fact that you had to say that, you can't even laugh. You have to laugh at yourself for that.
I saw him in preseason, and I'm not going to lie to you. My wife is not a sports fan, and she said that kid looked scared. And when she said that kid,
that's what it is.
That hurt.
That hurt. You mentioned the upbringing, and family is the foundation.
Yes.
So let's talk about this military family and whose shoulders you stand on today.
Yeah, I honestly, I always start off saying that I'm the proud son of Howard and Alita Ferguson. As I said before, my dad was in the military for 25 years, and so saying even their first name, I know a lot of young people, we're gonna have one in here today, but I hear them call their parents by their first name, I got no
Ooh.
hair. I am bald. It's a
Ooh.
lifestyle, not a choice.
Ooh.
And they would have dragged me across the playing field in a heartbeat. And so it was sir, it was ma'am.
I
It
didn't
was
even know my mother's name till I
Oh
was
no,
50.
no! It was mother. Um, God willing, they're deceased right now, but I didn't even say it at their funeral. And so, but just I'm adopted, and by the blessings, they are the individuals who are my parents. And people say, do you know your about? Those are my folks. And a mother who taught for 40 years. Is a lifetime educator, was overseas, taught in numerous states, here in Lincoln for 19 years. And then my father, who's a two-time veteran, went to Vietnam twice, and one of the first in his family to graduate high school, both with accelerated degrees. And those are the shoulders I stand on. Howard and Alita Ferguson, and so I make no bones about that. When people say you're a lot like your parents or a lot like your dad, you used to get kind of cringe because my dad was he was the associate warden at the state pen, commissioner of law enforcement in Plantation, Florida, in St. Louis, and I used to be, oh no, I ain't going, and I didn't realize the pride and the internal, what that meant, what that really meant. And when you hear that statement, you're a lot like your folks, that's the greatest honor that you could ever get.
What it meant is you had no problems at the Ferguson house.
Oh no. The rule was represent the name. Represent the name. And so, you can embarrass yourself, you can embarrass others, but if you embarrass the name, you're in trouble. So what that all came back to is if you embarrassed yourself, you embarrassed the name. If you embarrassed others, it was associated with you. And so you never embarrass the name. And that always stood first and foremost. And to this day, you can act a fool at home, but you better not be acting a fool out in public.
How does that affect what's next for you in life? I mean, finding out you're an athlete, it is the vehicle for a lot of things in life. Your ability to take it out into the streets, out of the country, out of the county, out of the state. How did it affect you as an athlete?
You're very generous on saying an athlete. So as I walk here with two bad knees, I'm telling you, if the Houston Rockets want to draft a 49-year-old that can't jump but can maybe get a rebound a game, I'm your person. But it impacted me in a lot of ways, and just the mere fact that I had opportunities that they didn't have. When you talk about like my mom being in California, she was probably the best athlete in our family. I'll make no bones about that. And she, because of Title IX, she was not able to play, not only because she was a female, but also because she was a black woman. And so she would get out there on the street and say, let's get over here and let's race. And she would smoke us. I think she was like Deion Sanders before Deion Sanders with a 4-3. She would throw that ball. I loved baseball. We lived in Arizona. And she would throw that ball, and I thought she was, Pedro Martinez and Nolan Ryan in her day. And so my dad, he was also somebody who loved sports, but because of financially where they were at, and you think about everybody in Texas playing athletics, that wasn't the case. He didn't financially have the opportunity to be able to do that. So he taught me, he ran. In the military, he played flag football. He was a heck of a racquetball player. People around this area that know him was a world-class racquetball player. And he was one of the reasons I stopped playing, because he conveniently would like to hit me with that ball and say I didn't get out of the way.
It's amazing how that works, isn't it? It's amazing how that works.
He always said discipline at its finest. Discipline at its finest. But, or that line, it hurts me more than it hurts you.
But it made you coachable.
It did. And I have a daughter now who's benefited from that. And so I feel like I instill, I've been able to put those things forward, hopefully for her. And she's grabbed, hopefully, a couple of those nuggets. And she'll be able to instill on others as she either goes in the coaching ranks or at the time that's appropriate, she decides to have children.
Look at you setting boundaries.
Oh, you're going to have to now.
Look at you. Come on with the boundaries. It's so necessary through all of this stuff. How much of your parenting and your leadership now is from the voice and the words of your parents?
I think it's not just the words and voices of them. They have definitely been the foundation. But it's been others that they've put me around. They've always put me around good people. And so obviously sometimes the hardest thing to do is to coach your own child. I mean, those are you kind of become tone deaf. And so it's been people like Dr. Jake Kirkland when we moved here, when we went to the Malone Center, that they put me around. Mr. Michael Cates. I remember, it's W.L. Threets, who when I was officiating, he was one of those individuals. To have the conversation when I was getting recruited and going to Hastings College and Coach Mike Trader, who was a Hall of Fame legendary coach out there, who embodied the same things that my father instilled at home, that same discipline, that same love, that same respect, that same value. So it's not only just what they put into me, but it's also making sure that I'm in the space with others who reinforce what they were saying. So when I didn't get it from them, I made sure that I was getting it.
Before we get into what happened at Hastings and all the growth and all the lessons and those sort of things, I want to get to how all of what you just said manifests on a day-to-day basis. For what you're doing now, your engagement is powerful, it's purposeful. How does it manifest? Tell me how you landed where you land and do what you do.
Yeah, it's been kind of a cycle, so to speak. I didn't see myself in this space, and I think sometimes why I'm here is because I want to make sure. I really do. I want to make.
If you had planned this, no, it can't happen that way.
No. Well, and I think that's the one thing that's nice about it. But just people say, "What are you passionate about?" And growing up, to be honest, I was just passionate about making sure I didn't get that switch or that broom, and so
hello, you may have to explain it to some folks because some folks wouldn't get that.
I'm just gonna say when people ask, did you get spanked? Did you get disciplined? I'm just gonna say I got whooped.
The switch was real life. I'm not sure I was ever motivated by anything as much as the switch.
Well, I mean, there was the spoon, there was the branch.
Oh, if I got the spoon, I was cool. And it was never my mother, it was never my stepdad. It was always my grandmother. My grandmother was 4'9".
Ooh, yes,
4'9".
Yes.
And my definition of love is my grandmother.
Oh yeah.
But when she bit her bottom lip and walked out the back door, I knew she was headed to the tree.
Oh yes.
And it was a problem. It was a problem.
Yes,
It was like some things were going to be rearranged. This is how I learned how fast I was. Quickness was purposeful. But those things that we talk about, right? Because now they show up now. Yeah. So that, and I tell people all the time, I made mistakes so you don't have to.
Exactly.
My mistakes were for you. And so I can tell you, here are all the things that I did out of dumbness that become kindness. And what you do on a day-by-day basis it reaches kids that you're never going to see the face of, right? It reaches households that you're never going to walk into. It's powerful, Peter, to know that everything that you do is landing in spaces that absolutely need it.
Well, and what I want to say is I appreciate you saying that, but I also want to give credit. We have nearly 43,000 scholars in Lincoln Public Schools. Okay, nearly 43,000 scholars in Lincoln Public Schools, and each and every one of them have promise. Each and every one of them are powerful, whether they're at Elliott Elementary or Mickle Middle School or Southwest, which you'll hear from, some phenomenal individuals from that school as well. They all have power and they all have promise. And then we have about 9,000 employees. And so whether it's your para, whether it's your, traditional math, science, and English teacher, whether it's an administrator, whether it's people at the district office, an administrative assistant, they all have power and they all have purpose. And people talk about, man, teachers, educators have such great passion. And I'll be honest, I talk about purpose. Passion will leave you. So if we're talking about athletics, you blow your knee out, you're not as passionate about rehab or about the sport during that time and during that moment. But it's about what is your purpose.
Commitment to execution.
It is
the thing that everybody's at 100 at the start of the game.
Exactly.
But if I lean on you for 40 minutes, how committed to this thing are you?
And when you're getting yelled at or when you're getting screamed at, do you remember and reflect on your purpose? And so I always say you'll have passionate moments during the course of whatever your tenure. But it's your purpose, and instead of your why, it's your purpose. And so I always say that my purpose is to empower. It's to be around people that empower me to get to those passionate moments, but also to leave the room better than I found it. It's to educate. Again, I tell people I'm a lifelong learner. I've got my PhD from the community. I always tell people I'm one keynote away from getting that honorary. So if anybody's out there, let me know. Taylor Swift's got 2 of them.
Hello.
And then I say engage. And I said nobody wants to go into spaces that, aren't engaging, that you don't want to be in. And so I make sure that when you talk about what I do, it's about what 43,000 scholars do each and every day and what 9,000 employees do.
We'll close this segment with this. I was on a panel yesterday, and it hit me as we were having the conversation that every teacher, every coach, every parent, every leader, you are either directly building a superhero or a villain. And it is simply based on what you choose to lead from. As long as love is present, we got a shot.
Without question.
We got a shot. We'll throw it a break. We'll come back. We're going to meet some of the fine people from Lincoln Southwest. Some great stories, some great futures, some great potential. We'll find out about all of it next. Second segment behind this thing and what we do each week. And again, we introduce some of the fine people from Lincoln Public Schools, whether they're athletes, whether they're scholars, whether they're educators, mentors, etc. Peter, I would love for you to introduce our guest, because I actually met her before I met her because I called a couple of her basketball games last year.
Okay.
The state tournament. Yeah, I was doing the play-by-play in those games. But would you please introduce our special guest?
No, without question. And I truly consider it an honor and a privilege to introduce scholar Anaya Seymour. She'll tell you a little bit more about herself, but she is a senior at Lincoln Southwest High School. She is I would say a multi-involved, I don't like saying multi-sport, a multi-involved scholar. And I always say scholar because it's easy to say somebody can be a student, somebody can be you'll hear the term kiddo and this, that, and the other. But she's involved not only just at school, but she's involved in the community. She's somebody I knew of, I think probably when you were like 5th, 6th grade. In regards to playing basketball and kind of around, and knew her family, but has just made a tremendous impact not only on me but also others that she's connected with. And so I am glad to have her here this morning, and I just want her maybe to share a little bit about herself and start off by sharing about her purpose.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you guys for having me. As Pete said, my name's Anaya Seymour. A lot of people call me Nye. Senior at Southwest, involved in a lot of clubs, activities. Some of those are, I'm involved in Unified PE, which we'll hear about later. And then LSW FCA, which is Fellowship of Christian Athletes, SALT, which is Southwest Athletic Leadership Team, obviously varsity basketball and varsity soccer for all 4 years. Also National Honor Society, and then the Equity Cadre that Pete runs that I'm also involved in. I've grown up in Lincoln all my life. I have 2 awesome parents who work very hard to keep me and my siblings supported and stable in our home. Marlon Seymour is my dad. He works at BNSF on the train, and my mom works at the county attorney office. Her name is Jessica Seymour. And then I have 2 amazing little siblings, Kason Seymour, who is a freshman at Southwest, so I get to have 1 year with him. And then my little sister, Jacelyn Seymour, but we call her Cece, who is a 7th grader at Scott Middle School. And yeah, I'm just excited to be here. My purpose, Pete said, I would say my purpose is just to be more impactful for, more specific, the youthful generations that we have coming up, just because I feel like when they have the information that I have now at such a young age, they can have those experiences and know how to handle certain situations and circumstances better than maybe I can right now. And just so they have more of that information and can be more impactful in when they get to my position. So yeah, I'd say that's my purpose.
She's a little bit modest.
Oh, no. I'm catching this. She's burying the lead. She's burying the lead here. Okay, so a couple things. Having seen you participate, there was leadership first and foremost. That's not easy to do. That's not easy to do in sports. The scholar thing being first. Please tell me why that's important. Why is the scholar part important?
I would say the scholar part is important just because, like, it motivates me to have like just a good future for myself, obviously, but also to just be like more impactful for my siblings. Like they're so important to me, and I just want to be able to be a role model for them, especially my little brother. Who's coming up right after me. They're so important to me. I just really want to be like someone they look up to, someone who does a great job in the classroom and involved in so many activities, because that's what gets you involved in the community and makes the community more put together, and more having a sense of togetherness, and puts out more love. So I just really want them to be involved in everything they can be in, not only to put a name out for themselves, but also just for them to be someone other people look up to also.
Whether we already know, I was going to cheat and ask you who's the best athlete in the family.
My dad would be mad at me if I said me, and my brother would also be mad at me if I said me also.
You better go ahead and own that. You better go ahead and own that.
I mean, me and my brother always get into an argument of what's harder, baseball or soccer. I said, definitely soccer. I mean, I run 10 miles a game, and Kaysen runs 10 yards.
I know he's impressed. I know he's an impressive young man. So leadership within the household is important.
Yes.
Job well done.
DP, one of the things she talked about being on honor roll. She's recently the NSAA Believers and Achievers nominee from Lincoln Southwest High School, and also a Division I soccer recruit. So she just talked about that. She's going to Illinois State after she completes her senior year, which is truly, to play collegiate level collegiately at any level is a big deal. But to go in a D1, and especially after the journey that you've had, and if you want to maybe enlighten people about that, you had a serious knee injury your sophomore year.
Yep.
And that for a lot of people could have put them out and just said, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do this anymore. I want to concentrate on one thing, and talk about what that journey was like, and how you uplifted others during that process, because it was really enjoyable to watch that piece.
Mm-hmm. And talking about like before my injury, like being scared of not having that confidence to come back to sports. That's something I really worried about, because before I even had my injury, I saw a lot of people with torn ACLs, torn meniscuses, and it just was like really had me worrying about if I even wanted to come back to sports, if I had that type of thing happen to me. And unfortunately it did my sophomore year. I had my meniscus was completely torn, completely separated in my left knee. So I had bone-on-bone collisions when I was walking. And I also had cartilage damage, which is the reason I had to stay in the brace for so long. But when that happened, obviously it was devastating. But the one thing that really got me through, like solely and really got me through it, was my parents. My mom was there for more of like the emotional support, crying in her arms whenever I needed it. My dad was more there for sharing his light, sharing his experiences on what happened. He had broke both of his ankles when he was in college, I think. So him sharing his stories really helped me, and being able to take what he went through and applying it to my injury was really good for me. I found myself doing a lot of things that he told me to do, like sharing my feelings with more people outside of my family, so like my coaches, my friends. That really helped. But the other thing, I was just really motivated and committed and determined to achieve the end goal, which was at that time to get back to summer basketball, which was the first sport I went back into after my injury. The recovery was successful. It took longer than I wanted it to, but it was very successful. I had really great surgeon, really great PT, so I'm just blessed to have my parents, my PTs, my friends, and all those people in my life that helped me through that journey.
One thing she said, and what I took notice of just you and this whole process, and you always talk about, is that love forward, love up and love out loud, is that you were always in every picture, even when you weren't playing on road trips. I mean, both your sports, you were there.
Yep.
You were there. You were on the sidelines. You were hugging. You were cheering, at state tournament. And the way you did that for your teammates and for others, even when you were hurting, that's what really impressed me, because it would have been real easy to say, I'm not going to go to Columbus for that game. I'm going to sit at the end of the bench and they're having success and I'm not a part of that success.
Yep.
And you loved others to ensure that, they could fulfill their fullest potential and have success, even maybe when you were struggling. And so just maybe talk about like what you did and maybe what you would recommend to others that might be kind of going through that same thing, how you loved others to kind of push them to success when you're struggling.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really do anything but to love others. I loved being around my coaches. I loved being around my teammates. Obviously, it was very, very difficult for me to be there at the beginning. Like, I found myself not wanting to go to games, not because I didn't want to be there, but because I didn't want to see. I didn't want anybody to see me and how that made me feel. But it's that vulnerability. I started to not really care. I did even cry a little bit after some games, especially when we won the district game that year. It was really emotional. But I think of myself as a very powerful, loving voice, and I know that my teammates love me and want me there. So it's just that love for my teammates, love for my coaches that kept me motivated, kept me going. Not only that, but I love the game. Even though I'm going to college for soccer, I still love basketball so much. So I'm excited for this season. I'm excited to get back on the court. But yeah, I would say just my teammates and my coaches and that love for them. And I love the emotional moments those are big for me, like winning that district game, and then the state tournament that year was really cool. So yeah.
Awesome. Presence is huge. Presence is huge.
Through our first meeting, there are people that in a room who resonate, like their vibration is high, and I couldn't help but pick on you at the event. So being able to speak to a room full of people that ultimately choose to participate for the greater good of everybody is a powerful thing. And so when I walked into that room at the cadre meeting, what I felt was hunger. There's a room full of people waiting to be fed, and we have to be careful about what we feed, right? But all I knew about in that room was the moment I mentioned loving each other and then loving themselves, the room changed. And you have that power because you were one of the first ones that jumped up and said, okay, I'm in. I'm always curious after the fact, from 10,000 feet of that day rather than being in the middle of it. What did you take away? What was the thing that mattered most when we were done and the room had flipped? What did you take away? What is the thing you remember most?
So, yeah, that day was so powerful. It was the most emotional message I've ever heard in the cadre. But the thing I most took away, you talked a lot about loving others, loving forward. But the thing I really took away was loving yourself first. I think that it's essential that you know yourself and you love yourself first in order to put that love out for others and for your community. And I think that also goes with loving people enough to share your experiences, the hard ones, the good ones, because I mean, loving is not good all the time. Mm-hmm. Like, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna be a little bit painful. So sharing those harder experiences, harder messages, I think is what made that message so emotional for some people. Myself, I cried. I know other people did, but I just think that knowing yourself and loving yourself is so important for the messages that you have and the experiences that you want to share to other people. So that's what I took away, is more on the loving yourself part.
Through leadership, identifying yourself, location, right?
Yeah.
As you talk about, right, that you had the injury, and the way you're going to play now is not the way is absolutely affected by the things that happened to get you there. And the way you care about it is you're fully invested based on your journey, and the people who know your journey root for you harder. Like they trust you more. Yeah. They know, oh, this matters to Anaya. Look, I can't let her down, and I got to be in that space. It is a great space to be in. And I can say this freely. As I said that day, what I do better than most people is I identify talent. And by talent, I mean people who care enough to love the thing that they talk about loving the right way. Like that thing matters. Yeah. That, listen, to say you love it is one thing. To be active in loving it is a whole other. And to see somebody who goes through the trial, you go through the friction, and we mentioned friction that day. Friction's going to happen. Friction is required for greatness. It absolutely is. And you have that in you, and it's going to be amazing to watch your journey. So, just much. A part of wanting you in this space was letting people know who you are and to give people a chance to love you the way you deserve, because it's you've earned everything that's coming for you.
Thank you.
So,
Anaya, share a little bit about, you talked about you're involved with Unified Sports. And so that's, one of our focuses, and we have some individuals who help lead that. What has that experience been like for you, and how did you get involved in that?
So last year was my first year in Unified PE. How I got involved, one of my friends, actually multiple of my friends, had said how fun it is, how cool it is playing games with the athletes. So I was like, how do I apply? So one of my friends were like, talk to Brendan about it. I was like, okay, like where can I find her? They're like, here. And I was like, okay. So I went to talk to her about it. She was like, I mean, yeah, you're awesome. I mean, come on in. So I was like, great. And then, so last year was my first year. I love the community. I love being able to talk to the athletes and just interact with the athletes. And like it's not only is it fun, but it's also more empowering for yourself, and like more I don't know how to say it, but like it gives you more of a boost to know that you're being that like shoulder for them, and someone who may treat them differently than you might treat them. So I think that I just love that part of it, being able to interact with them and being able to be someone who treats them nicely than maybe other people may see them. Seeing them in that light, and having them feel like they have someone they can talk to in the hallways or something like that is really, really special to me.
Awesome. And I think that what you said, your acknowledgement of just, those scholars as athletes, and the investment that you've made of being present, again, when you talked about just loving people forward and loving out loud, of being in that presence. You don't hide from that. It's not something you're doing on the side. You're doing it during the course of the day. You're doing it on weekends. And so I think that's something that's part of your DNA. That's part of who you are. And so I think DPs definitely saw that in the room that day. And that's why I definitely wanted to make sure that you were in this space, because you are just an individual. It's phenomenal in a lot of different ways. And I knew of you, but didn't really know you. And the impact that you made last year by, elevating your voice. We always talk about putting space together where we can promote positive youth action. I was kind of wondering, I'm going to be honest. I was just like, is she going to say anything? Is it going to be that typical experience? Everything's great and good. And you really elevated your voice and were authentic in what you said. Yeah. And this is my journey. And I get that some of it has been good, but I also recognize these are challenges when we have to take steps towards equity, justice, civility, and kindness. And I'm holding individuals accountable for that when it comes not only to me, but it also is impacting other individuals. And so for that, I say thank you. And I know the ceiling is not yet achieved for you. And so I know your parents are proud, and I'll just say this, you're the best athlete in the house. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. If I get some DMs when I walk out of here, your dad might say something, but you can say you're the best scholar athlete in the house.
Thank you so much.
Before we get out of this segment, a couple of things that I have to pat you on the back for. One, ownership of the word scholar and the responsibility that's tied to it. And then finally, the standard that you're setting in the space that you're in. It is so necessary, and it is so invigorating to find somebody that wants to lead, that want to set the standard and to be responsible for it. again, now you have to carry with you that you're going to affect people that come after you,
Yep.
that you're never going to meet simply because you did. Well done.
Thank you. Thank
Well
you.
done. We'll throw the break. We'll come back. There's more power in the room. We will introduce those folks when we return. Welcome back. Final segment of, when you say this thing out loud, then you have to become accountable for it. That's the beauty of this thing. Bigger than the game. It's a result. It's an accumulation of all the good people who get student athletes, scholar athletes to the space that they need to get into to achieve the things they need to achieve. Great schools make great people. Great people make great schools. Peter, introduce our two next guests.
It's hard to top the one we had before with Scholar Seymour, but we've got two individuals that I personally have impacted me and my family in a lot of different ways, and I'll share briefly on that. But we have Miss Brandy Benson, who she'll tell you all the things she does, but is involved in journalism. She's a unified sports coordinator or director at Southwest High School.
Hello.
Easy. Whoops.
Hello.
Southwest High School media teacher. She's also an advisor with the cadre, the Lincoln Public Schools equity cadre, and then Coach Liz Brendan. And I will have to, the side note, she's got a lot of things under her belt. Not only coaches softball, has been a former basketball coach, does the unified PE, is a former Husker. So what is it, 92 to 96?
Yeah, something
Look
like
at
that.
she's like, something.
Low key.
Like something like that. It just
Back in
happened.
the day.
But this is what I'll say, how she's impacted my household. So my daughter, when she decided to go to Southwest High School, had been doing some after-school gyms in middle school and et cetera, et cetera. And Coach Brendan said, so what number would you want? And so I'm thinking, as a proud dad, I made an impact on her. She's going to want 34 to be like Akeem Olajuwon, following the legacy. We even had 34 for home, 35 away. She had two choices. And then come to find out, she goes, well, what number are you, Coach?
13.
And she goes, 13. That's the number I want. And so for her entire career, on her Twitter handle and everything, it's Fergie 13 because of Coach Brendan. And so that's how she's influenced our household. But two phenomenal individuals, and I want them to just kind of maybe introduce themselves and tell a little bit about who they are.
I'll start. I usually, Brendan and I, like Pete said, do a lot with Unified. Excuse me. And we coach together, and so I have the head coaching position, even though we do everything 50%. And the reason that I have it is because Brendan says I'm a good hype squad person. So I'm the person who takes the pictures, writes the press releases, gets the word out, and is just loud about what we do. And so, so I work at Lincoln Southwest. I've been there 10 years now. I advise all of our media stuff. And then about 7 years ago, we started doing unified bowling, and that has blossomed into this year. We now have 7 different unified opportunities, along with Special Olympics for students to participate in. And that's just been amazing. The entire purpose of what we do is finding ways in our school to make it more inclusive for all students of all abilities. And I couldn't do it without Coach Brendan. We also have Coach Lynn Strack, who's not here. Our special education coordinator, Christy Shampoo, helps us as well. And I tell my students all the time, strong leaders build strong leaders. And I think that that's what makes what we do at Southwest with Unified so impactful, is we give our partners, our athletes, the space to attempt to be brave and to do the things they want to do to make things inclusive. And we just get to sit back and watch them shine. So it's pretty fun. I'm Liz Brendan. Yes, I teach at Southwest for a long time, since the school's opened. Before that, I was at Goodrich for 4 years, and like Pete said, I'm a former Husker from 92, 96, and I think back to all those tough experiences I had there to help me become a better teacher and coach, and and I don't know, it's been an amazing experience and run that we've had, and going back to, with unified stuff, we're a great team. And why we're a great team is because we build off of each other. Like what I don't like to do, Brandy loves to do, which is perfect for me, and, the things that she doesn't like to do, I like to do. So, we all work really well together. And, she has the head title, so she gets all the emails that I don't have to deal with.
Right.
And we always, when I started teaching at high school, the one thing I said I never wanted to do was coach. I had my first degree before I went into teaching was in sports broadcasting, and so I did that for a while, and then I loved journalism so much I decided I wanted to go back to become a teacher. But the one thing I didn't want to do was coach because it just makes me so anxious. Competition makes me so anxious. And so when Unified came along, it was perfect because the first thing that Lincoln Public Schools implemented was bowling. And everybody can bowl, right? Maybe not well,
Right.
but everybody can bowl. And so when Brendan and I started doing it together, I think she was a little annoyed at my lack of competitive nature because I was
That is
like,
true.
we
Very
didn't
true.
hit any pins. Congratulations, you know?
I'm like, come on, we could just hit one pin. We can't have open
At
frames.
least
Let's
go
go.
home and
And I'm,
practice on wheels.
and I'm like, but we got it
Exactly.
down the lane. Yes, we got it down the lane.
I'm sorry, the coach in me is screaming.
Right?
That's what.
Screaming.
Yep,
Oh,
that's Brendan every single year.
let's get it. No, first of all, let me commend you. Liz, there's a phrase that me and my coaching buddies use, that when somebody grabs and accepts a piece of who you are as themselves, there's a phrase we use. Got him. When his daughter takes your number, it is part of the got him. Like,
Got him.
got him. It's there. It doesn't happen often enough. Now, both of you are required in the space that you're in, exactly as you are, because there are people that identify with whatever space that you need. I love the fact that you guys are here at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning to tell the stories, to invite people in to know who you are and what you do. I'll ask you, the question still is, why? Why do you do what you do? Why does it matter who got you here?
I think it's one of those things that I've known since I was in 4th grade. I was going to be a Division I basketball player, and I was going to be a PE teacher and a coach. I knew those things because my PE teacher, she played basketball at Oregon State, and we were playing one-on-one, and I beat her when I was in like 5th or 6th grade. So I knew at that point that was my path, and my mom and dad, they supported me on that path. Going into my senior year of high school summer, I had a really bad high ankle sprain, so I couldn't play summer. And I think you reflect back, like, why did that happen? Because you're not happy at the moment. You're like, I'm supposed to get recruited. But recruiting back then is way different than it is now. And then it happened, and I think it happened because I ended up being at the right school when it came down to it, down at the end of it. I think if I was healthy, I would have made a poor choice where I would have gone, and going to like the University of Nebraska was the best option for me because I needed more academic support than some of these other schools that were going to provide for me. So my journey, I knew from day one that this was the path I was going to go. Now I've had a lot of bumps along the way, but those have also helped me become a better person.
I did not know I wanted to be a teacher, and I tell my students all the time, if I would have went to school to be a teacher first, I probably would not have been a successful teacher. When I was growing up, I wanted to be either a sports announcer or an auctioneer. Because I can talk very, very quickly. And so I settled on being an announcer, even though I'm from Wyoming, could have been an auctioneer very easily. There's a lot of cattle. And so, like I said, I did the announcing thing for a little bit, and it was really fun, but I miss working with people. I've always loved to work with other people, and I love hyping people up. Like I said, I love focusing on the positive. I'm a huge silver lining person. And I got that from my upbringing. My mom and dad are amazing people. And my dad, his number one phrase, quote, all the time was, remember your lion's heart. Anytime there was a tough situation, anytime there was something, you were, making a big decision, or when you saw something that wasn't right, or should you stand up for someone, it was always remember your lion's heart, remember your courage, remember where you come from, remember how strong you are, how brave you are. And then both of my parents, my dad worked construction his entire life. My mom still owns a print shop today. And the biggest thing that I took away from them is giving everything you have, and I've been trying to figure out my purpose, because if you're in the cadre, you have to have a purpose. And so I've been thinking about the different ways to state it. And the only thing I can come back to is, my mission, my purpose is to serve. And there's a quote that is something to the extent of, when I stand before God at the end of my life, I want to be able to say, I used everything you gave me, and I have nothing left. And I think, on a Sunday morning when you get up, when Coach Brendan and I were doing unified bowling interviews at 7 o'clock in the morning, that's why we do what we do, because there's always going to be one student or one person who needs help, and they need that person to step in. They need that person to hype them up. And that's our job. That's why we do what we do.
Well, I think the answer is they need you as you are. Like, there's somebody that, no matter what it is that you bring to the table, there's somebody that shows up at your door that day that needed just you. And it's so cool to watch. We talk about friction, and friction applies itself in several different spaces. Liz, I was reading his notes about who he's bringing in today, and your friction has been loud, and it was constant, and then there's success behind it, right? The growth behind it. How did you get through your friction?
It's just reflecting back of, one thing you got to know, I don't worry about the things I can't control. I've been that way, all my life. My friends, Heidi and Holly, I drive them crazy because they like to worry about everything. And I'm like, can you control it? They're like, no. I'm like, just let it roll off your back. I mean, there's things that you can control and there's things you can't, when I got diagnosed with cancer in 2015, or, when I stopped coaching basketball, those are things that just happened. They're out of my control. I can't worry about it. But, when I had cancer, the only thing I could do was, I had to stay positive. I had to trust the system and the process. I had to trust my doctors, my friends. I had to rely on a lot of people, which was, I'm not used to relying on people because, I'm independent, I'm strong, I'm a coach. I just do things then I had to accept that, this is more, it's bigger than me. And I'm going to have to rely on tons and tons of people to help me get through all of my, the process of going through the cancer treatments and everything, and, it's one of those things where you think back to all your experiences, like as an athlete, because, you can reflect back on all the things that the struggles, the trials, the tribulations, the blood, sweat, tears. And you just reflect back on that, when you're a competitor, you're going to fight, and I'm a competitor. And so I'm going to fight. And so, it was just believing in the process and just having faith that everything is just it's going to work out, and obviously it did, thank goodness.
And again, that's why we work so well together, because I worry about all of the things that are not in my control. So
I don't. I just let it roll off my back. Because you know what? I don't want to waste time on things I can't control.
As we push up on time, I'd be interested in each of you maybe just sharing. We talk about this is bigger than the final score, but what is one of those moments that you've had that just resonates, that when you either reflect back or as you think about that purpose or being involved, that still speaks to you to this day?
And I think back to my unified PE class. The one thing that we've always had adaptive PE. And then we transitioned to unified, which we were doing already until the district finally gave us the okay to do. One of the things I reflect back to that first year is that the relationships that were built that were unintentional outcomes, like our athletes with our partners. One of our athletes goes, hey, I've never been to this is pre-COVID now, remind you, pre-COVID. So I've never been to a Silverhawk basketball game. My partner goes, oh my gosh, you're going. And so the next, they're playing video games together. They're going to movies. They went and played laser tag, and he's in a wheelchair. And I'm like, how'd you do that? And like, we just ran. I'm like, that's not the rules, like, come on, But they had such a great time and then getting invited to the athletes getting invited to the partners' graduation, and the athletes' parents coming up to me like, we never expected our kids to get invited to the regular ed students grad parties, like, we had to go buy more gift cards, we had to go buy more cards, and so that that was an unintentional outcome that was so positive and so successful that you just there's no words to describe the feeling of that unity of that and the friendships that were developed from this class.
And I was going to say the same thing. I think that the unintentional of what we've started has been the biggest piece. Last year at state basketball, we were able to have a unified section so that, a ton of our partners and athletes could go to a state basketball game, because for a lot of students, that's something that they've never been able to do. And I think that we forget that sometimes. And the joy of Unified is that it's creating those spaces for kids to build those friendships that should have always been there, right? One of the things that I think about too, I'll go quickly because I know we're running out of time, is right now this year we've implemented Unified Choir, but it's only a half of a block. And so for some of our students, we were thinking, well, what should we do? And I said, well, put them in my yearbook class for fourth block. So again, we found some partners. We have partners and we have journalists. And so my partners help the journalists that come in, and we're kind of doing like a unified yearbook class. And so I think, like Liz said, like we just talked about, looking at and recognizing the ways that we can do this. We can unify things. Everybody can do things. It's just how do we make it so it's possible for everybody to do them.
DP, I know as we get ready to close, I want to make sure you get your flowers while you live. We have 2 award winners here. And so, Brandy has been honored with the 2021 Distinguished Advisor Award from the Nebraska High School Press Association.
Good. Congratulations. Well done.
Thank you.
Coach Brendan here, who's the 2020 Nebraska Adaptive Physical Education Teacher of the Year. And so they have both been recognized, and from a district standpoint, the district has been recognized for their unified work. As I made that Freudian slip earlier, Southeast High School was recognized this week as one of the unified schools within the country, but Southeast and Southwest are both leaders in that, not only in the state, but the region and the country. And so, to sum up kind of everything that you said, I often reference Maya Angelou's quote. And it's, I often forget what people have said. I often forget what people have done, but I always remember how people have made me feel. And what you spoke about and what Anaya spoke about earlier, and DP, your interaction with the cadre a couple weeks ago, not everybody's going to remember what was said. And not everybody's going to remember the hugs that were given. And you talked about bowling or being in that section at the state tournament game, but it's how individuals felt. There was inclusion, there was belonging, there was a moment of equity, and when that occurs, nobody can disagree, nobody can argue with that.
And that's what we all want, right? Ultimately, we're looking for people, we're looking for a place, and I think that's our job as humans. I know that's our job as coaches and as scholars, is to create those spaces for people to belong.
Well, this station is partnering with you, and we'll tell these stories each week, and we'll share the goodness that is. Because it needs to be known. That is the big part of Love Out Loud. Thank you all for sharing your stories and your persons, your hearts. Today, Pete, we'll do it again.
Without question. I appreciate it, DP.
Thank you, guys.